Let us pray. O God of creation, eternal majesty, you preside over land and sea, sunshine and storm. By your strength, pilot us. By your power, preserve us. By your wisdom, instruct us. And by your hands, protect us. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. All right. Before I forget to tell you, this Sunday is the church picnic. So we're not going to be live streaming worship this Sunday. We're going to record it, and then we'll post a recording of it later next week. But that's at 11 at Baxter Park in Evendale. Dogs are welcome. And we'll have lunch afterwards. But it starts at 11, not 10:30. So just to let you know, are you playing?
I don't know. I get my second shot on Saturday.
Oh, right. So you're going to see how you feel. Gotcha. Best of luck to you. May it go well and not be strenuous.
I'm going to bring some chicken. I was thinking about bringing a tuna casserole, but I don't know how I would keep it hot. So I figured I'll just bring a couple buckets of chicken. That'll be good.
That sounds delicious. Perfect. I look forward to eating your fried chicken or baked chicken or whatever you have.
It's famous recipe, probably.
Super. All right. Well, this Sunday is a favorite gospel. It's Jesus calming the storm. So in your Bible, you can turn to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4.
Oh, I'm way on Job.
If you are, yes, well, you can keep your bookmark there. If you're using this Bible, it's on page 709.
Well,
and the page numbers are in the center there.
I've got a different Bible.
What are we looking at? Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. So Mark 4, starting with verse 35.
Okay. On the day. You froze up. No, you didn't.
Nope. I'm just waiting for everybody to turn. All right. That day, when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat. And so it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." The Gospel of the Lord. All right. Maybe I'm naive, but I feel like perhaps this is a Bible story that doesn't need like so much backstory or, I don't know, contextual instruction about like the context or like culturally or religiously at this time. So I'll just say a couple of brief things, and it's significant in the Gospel of Mark that this happens towards the beginning of the Gospel, so already in chapter 4, because Jesus is revealing to his disciples that he's not just a rabbi, he's not just a teacher, and he's not a prophet either only, that he shows he has the power over like the natural world to show that he is God. And so it happens early on in this gospel as the disciples are starting to clue in on like exactly who Jesus is and what his power is. And it's also to reveal to us before everything else that happens in the gospels, who he really is and the extent of his power. That being said, I guess today, let's just take it sort of verse by verse and talk about what you observe, since it's pretty short and there isn't a lot of like theological back stuff that we have to work through. So we'll just take it verse by verse, and we'll just, I guess, and feel free to share what observations you have or what it makes you think of. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, okay, so I'm thinking that day which means like, okay, it's on the same day. And what happened before that? If you look up in the section above, he was teaching them all. So there was the parable, like we just heard this last week, of the mustard seed, the parable of the growing seed, letting your light shine, the parable of the sower. So that's the one where the four different kinds of soil, and then it grows in the good soil. So he's just on the same day, he just has been teaching them a lot. And then it's that night. And so I wonder if like it happens on this night, he's been teaching them about the kingdom of God and the power that he has. And then, so he's been telling them, and now he shows them by really having strength and force over nature. He shows that he is the power, and the kingdom of God has come in him. So first he tells them, and then he shows them. Let us go over to the other side. Anything else in that verse that catches your attention or that you're wondering about?
The other side, what are they talking about?
Yeah, great question. I don't know if the microphone picked it up, but the question was the other side. What is that question? And he's on a lake. I wonder where it says, where he was first starting teaching. At the beginning of chapter 4, if you turn back, the beginning of chapter 4, verse 1, again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. It doesn't tell us which lake they are at. And I don't see any other references in chapter 3 about which lake it is. Just one second. I'm just going to see if it's referenced in my notes here. I don't see any notes. So I'm sorry. I don't know which lake he's at.
Must have been one of those things where they thought that they were writing to the locals and just like, the lake, everybody knows the lake. Why would I need to say anything?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Like if they're imagining that they're just going to pass this gospel around among those like who are locals, then yeah. Did you find something, Sarah?
Well, the last reference I see is Capernaum. And then my Bible has a little map that says it's on the Sea of Galilee. And my passage actually says that he was preaching on the sea.
Oh, nice. Okay, so
Charlie?
The Sea of Galilee, which is really a big lake. Thank you for that. Good detective work. Thank you. And I think your point remains the same, Addie, about I guess maybe at this point that Mark isn't so concerned about telling us that, just because he assumes that it's local. So that's helpful. And good question, Nick. Sorry, it took us a while to get there.
That's okay.
But your instinct is great to follow that detail, because the gospel writers do include details to tell us, because it's important. So for example, like on that day, again, it's significant that the calming of the storm is connected with all the teaching about the parables. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. Do those details make you think of anything or make you wonder anything?
I just want to get away from the crowd for a while.
That's understandable. Yeah. When I think it was 2 Sundays ago from the gospel that it said that the crowds packed in on him and the disciples so much that they couldn't even eat. Like it's just like they were all like he was always being asked for healing or for help or for teaching. So yes, he leaves the crowd for a moment, for this special moment with the disciples.
Just as he was. Or was he?
Hmm.
Yeah, that bothered me too. And the other boats were with him, whatever that means. It's like, I mean, other boats were with him, and yet they took him. I don't know. It sounds funny to me. It makes you wonder, was that
What is-
necessary to say? What did that add to it that other boats were there? Because they said they left the crowd behind.
Right.
I was guessing it was that the boats were so small that you couldn't fit all 12 at once.
Oh. And the others were with him. Sorry, I
Right.
realized I hadn't been turning the screen.
Yeah, like it was a small enough boat that you'd have to take the disciples in multiple boats. That's what I was assuming.
That could definitely be. That makes sense.
But big enough boat apparently to have a stern with a cushion.
Yeah. So it's not like a ship. It's more like possibly
Like a fishing boat.
right.
I can imagine, yeah.
See, the way I kind of took that was he's taking one boat out because of what's going on later. He's about to teach them another lesson. That's why they've got the squalls
Uh-huh.
and everything else. He's wanting to teach the disciples a lesson. What that lesson may be, I don't know. But he just wants to make sure that within that one vessel, he's able to keep everybody safe.
Hmm. Yeah, and it made me wonder, is the point of telling us the other boats are with him that there were other witnesses? I mean, I think like what you guys have said makes sense too. So that's like, this is just another alternative. If they're all in the same boat, then like if there are other boats too, then there are other witnesses than just the disciples. And as to just as he was, I guess that makes me think maybe he just starts off normally, like here he is, he's about to calm a storm, and there's nothing like, there's no glowing aura about him. Like he doesn't look like, he's not transfigured, he's not transformed. He looks as he always does, like a human being walking with them, to signal maybe like nothing special has to happen to him in order for him to have this power. He has this power just as he is, because he is God and human at the same time. Could that be?
I take it as though he's clothed and he knows what's going to happen, but there's no preparation to, okay, if we're going to get wet, I need to do this, or, whatever they did then.
Didn't change into his boat clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just clothed as he has been for the entire day.
I don't know if they have boat clothes, but I
Right.
feel like I feel like the sandals would not do well on a boat. They probably diff shoes for boats. So that's how I took it as.
Yeah. Okay. So he's not doing any special preparation. He's just going as he is.
He's not wanting everybody to think that something will happen.
Right. Yeah. Good. God bless you all. I feel, thanks to you, it's like a different look at this story, that are the details that you noticed I haven't noticed before. So thank you. Keep it up. Let's do the next verse. A furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped.
Can I go back to that verse a little bit? I was just reflecting, and it really affected me whenever he was able to stop the wind. And he heals people, he does all these amazing things, raises people from the dead, but somehow stopping the wind seems more powerful to me personally. It was like, how did he do that?
Yeah.
But I never asked, how did he cure people, or how does he raise people from the dead? I never asked that, but how did he stop the wind?
I guess it's the most unrelatable thing to us in modern day. Because
Okay.
like I mean, obviously, we're not curing people like Jesus, but we're still curing people. We're still resuscitating people, which is basically raising from the dead, all that kind of stuff, but we're not calming wind.
Okay, thanks, Addie. That helps.
Yeah. Like science has not yet mastered how to control the weather.
Right.
And I would guess that that's exactly why God knows that we need this story, and also why it's a lot of people's favorite gospel story, is because it is so different. Like maybe for some, it's like proof that Jesus really is God. He's not just a human being, and it feels like a holy moment because it's such a vivid imagery. You can almost imagine yourself on the water in the boat, and like what would it be like to actually witness Jesus calm the storm. That I guess God knows that, like you're pointing out, Linda, that it catches your attention in a different way than other stories. It's like, how is that possible? He must be God. Kind of like that Jesus can walk on water too, and that others can't do that. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I guess the details here in verse 37 are to show that like it's a big deal. Like it's a very intense storm, and there is danger for those, like the disciples' life could be threatened. Like they could, if the boat is swamped and the storm continues, they could drown. So I think this sort of relates. I consider myself a pretty good swimmer. Like I'm not awesome, but I mean, I can safely get myself to shore. But I went once when we were on vacation, just like on a small like fishing boat, and we were you could still see the shore. We were probably like a mile from shore, and so you could still see it. And I could probably swim it, but I felt so exposed when we got out of the boat and we're doing snorkeling. It's so bizarre, like the just open space like water, and how exposed and powerless one feels. I don't know. Have any of you ever gone on a cruise or felt that way if you've been near the ocean or anything like that? Or I don't know. I guess you could have the same experience when you're flying a plane, but
Kayaking against current.
you just like you felt really powerless.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously I made it back, but it does, like if you're not within like 20 or 30 feet of the coastline, it's just like, what is going on? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And like it was in like a bay in the Everglades, so it was like pretty open water, and we'd kayaked for a good like hour with the current, and suddenly we're just like, oh my gosh, we are so far, and now this is so much harder.
Yeah. And there's that moment where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Like, are we going to go like be taken out? Were you going to say something, Linda?
Yeah, I'm not in swimming necessarily, but when I stand by the ocean and watch it, makes me feel very small. So to me, it was peaceful. I felt that there was something out there much greater than me, and that any troubles I thought I had sort of went out to sea. I'll say that.
Nice imagery. Any troubles you had went out to sea. All right, verse 38. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" What do you observe about this verse?
They lack faith.
Yeah, you think that, okay, is there lack of faith? Like, do you see it as a lack of trust in him, a lack of realization of who he is and his power?
His lack of concern.
That they think that he's not concerned. What were you going to say, Kim?
I think they kind of leak. If they're the disciples and they've seen his miracles and the power he really has, I think it's, how sometimes we all get scared sometimes. And even though we know God's with us, sometimes we all lose that faith and don't really pay attention or think at the moment, in the heat of the moment, how powerful he really is. So I think if they were in dire straits and in that serious trouble, he would have had that instinct and woke up and, you know, maybe it was a test for the disciples.
But they attacked him right off the bat. They didn't say, teacher, wake up, we're having trouble and we need you. Or it was like, how can you be asleep while we're like drowning or whatever? We're in trouble. Don't you know, to me, it was sort of a small thing to do, not nice.
I'm wondering, I don't know if I entirely agree with my own point, but I'm wondering if it's more of a like, how can you sleep at a time like this? Because they ask at the end, they're confused. They're surprised that the wind and the waves obey him. So I guess what I'm picturing, growing up in Ohio, tornadoes are super common. And my mom would not let me sleep through a tornado. Like she always made us get up and go downstairs and all that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of interpreting it like that, of like, how can you sleep at a time like this? Don't you want to be alert with the rest of us? Because they're so surprised at the end of just like, wait, what? He can like conquer the waves too? That doesn't make sense.
So they don't wake him up with the expectation that he's going to rescue them?
Maybe. I'm not entirely convinced of my own point, but I think it's a possibility.
Yeah. I would say that makes sense in the passage because of their question.
I think too, like, not literally from this, but in like a figurative sense, I take from it, it's very similar to when we say, God, where were you when this horrible thing happened? Why didn't you protect me? Why didn't you take care of me?
Right.
We believe in God and we believe that he's all powerful, but we still wonder, question where he is when we need him.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that connects with what you were saying, Kim, about like they've seen him do miracles, they've seen him heal people, and like, yet that's not enough to convince them in this time to not panic.
I mean, he was there when he parted the Red Sea and then brought it back together and killed all the.
Yeah, I was going to say that's Old Testament.
Still, it's God. Yeah, I mean, because like so they know, if they're getting to know, okay, in their faith, they know and they trust that God has power, and they see that even if they don't know that Jesus is God yet, that they know that God's power is at work in them. So yeah, all of not just their own experiences of watching Jesus, but also their knowledge of what God has done throughout history, you would think would be in their minds. And again, that's like us too, that like we know that God rescued the Hebrews from the Red Sea and from the Egyptians. We know that Jesus calmed the storm, and yet, yeah, the first response when something horrible happens is, where were you? And don't you care, God?
Somehow I'm thinking that is it a lesson or a message to us that we need Jesus in order that Jesus will care for us? And to be alert, do we have to not let down our guard ourselves? Somehow it's like Jesus is teaching us a lesson at the same time he's sleeping.
Yeah. He's teaching us a lesson while he sleeps. Were you saying too, Kim, before this, at some moment, like, Mark just said he's teaching them to have confidence in him. Were you also implying that too, like part of this is sort of part of God's plan, like that this is happening? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's a lesson for all of us because, the disciples are the ones that I feel like, and I could be wrong, that should have the most faith in him because they've seen him do so many miraculous things.
right.
They should be the one that says, oh, just wake him up. God, Jesus can take care of this, just like that. But yet they panic and they do it brusquely
Yeah.
and accusingly almost. Like, hey, what are you going to do about this?
When you said that, I felt like, ooh, that should be me too. Like how you're saying they're the disciples, they've seen all of this stuff happen. And so then they should trust God the most. And I realized that's like all of us Christians. I mean, like
Okay, but we're not working side by side with
no, no,
we walk in faith, but we've never walked side by side for him. So we, yes, see miracles and we've seen firsthand how mighty he is, but to be in the moment with Jesus when he is doing that, that's totally a different realm.
that's true. That is a lot different. That's true.
And that's why he got up on that cross for us to, prove to us nothing's out of my hands and I'm with you always. You may not see me, you may not be able to touch me, but I'm here.
Yeah. So you're right. They do, like, they get to experience Jesus in a different way, on a different level, a different realm. And I guess, okay, the longer I'm a Christian and the longer like that I'm in this church, like the more stories I see and hear of how God like specifically reaches individuals based on their needs. In life, or like where they are at, and then how God meets them through one of our ministries, say like drama ministry, or through the Sunday school, or through the music on a particular day, and how like God brings us together in that. I guess like as you string those stories together, you think about them all the time, like really, even if we like even one miracle or even one instance where it felt like God specifically reached our heart and told us through scripture or the hymns or the sermon or whatever, and when we gather for worship or through a Bible study, even if we had just one experience of how God specifically reached our heart with what we needed, like maybe that could be enough to cling to, and yet it's not. I don't know. It's just not. That still our response is always, where were you? Or why are you letting this happen?
We're always looking for that next miracle.
Yeah.
Instead of living in the moment and accepting what we've been given and what we've seen, we're always waiting for that next miracle. And if we don't get it, then we're questioning, okay, why am I being punished? What did I do to deserve this? Why am I being punished? That's what I always say. And
yeah,
I know I lack a lot of faith and trust in God because I'm always questioning him, like, why are you telling me no?
right.
Yeah,
what's the purpose of this? I saw Mark, you put a comment. Perhaps Jesus wasn't really sleeping, but meditating to cause the waves and the wind to stir or shake up his disciples, to give them another opportunity to realize his ability. And sort of along that lines with what like Kim said, maybe testing. I think it was Linda. If I get it wrong, whoever said what, please forgive me. But I think Linda said it's like he's purposely sleeping. Was that someone said that? Maybe it is like to draw the disciples out. Like if he's just awake, well, okay, first of all, on one level, perhaps he just needs to sleep because he's human, and like people have been asking for his power and for his help all day, and that's exhausting. So perhaps on one level he is just tired and sleeping, but on another level, perhaps like it is purposeful that he does go to sleep so that they are faced with that, so that then they can see it. Even though he says you haven't had enough faith, like unless he falls asleep, unless the storm comes, they don't get to see him have power over it.
he's tired too.
Yeah.
He's a nap.
I would prefer not to think that he actually caused the storm to come up, though, because I find there to be a big difference between him knowing that it was about to happen and him making it happen.
Yes.
It's like saying God's putting bad things in your life so that you'll learn a lesson. Whereas other than the other side of it would be, these things are going to happen. God knows that he's going to be with you to go through them. That's a much better for me.
Yes. And the things that's at stake, is this correct, that it's it makes God seem more trustworthy. If God doesn't specifically will like the evil to happen.
Right.
So you don't think God makes the thunder and lightning when he's angry? I'm just kidding.
I think the thunder and lightning are part of, the electrical works of a storm that's very important for our weather and our crops and our world. Yes, but do I believe that God specifically makes hurricanes happen and makes bad storms come up in the sea in the middle of
That would be safe.
that? No, I don't like that idea. Maybe I'm just picking and choosing what I want to think of him, and that's okay. But
Well, I think it's from like that comes from like a deep felt place of compassion for people in the world. And there's so much suffering that if we make the claim that God specifically wills the wind and the waves in this story, it's not far to jump and say that God specifically wills suffering in people's lives to teach them a lesson. And we wonder, well, at what cost? Because it comes to mind all the people who can say like they don't have faith because of the evil they have suffered. And so then that doesn't make sense with who we know Jesus to be. So I would say it's not just that you're picking and choosing what you choose to believe, but that it comes from your experience of God's goodness and mercy and trustworthiness. And that doesn't seem to quite align.
But people pray for rain, for example. And does God make it rain because people prayed for it? Or
Such a good question.
or if he doesn't make it happen, then why pray for it? Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
No, it's good. I sorry, my sheepish face is because I can't answer this question in a satisfying way. Oh, Sarah can.
Sarah's got it. Okay. Go, Sarah.
people are praying for rain, it's because there hasn't been rain. There's been like a drought or something. There's been an imbalance in the environment. And so we're praying for God to intervene and fix that imbalance. We're not praying for him to make a horrible storm come up. We're praying for him to fix the imbalance in the weather. That's what I'm sticking with.
You're going with that one? Okay. I'll process that.
We'll find a way to bring it around.
Yes. I'll just say, I hope this doesn't make you feel too uncomfortable, because I'm not really sure yet, or I'm not sure what I believe about this today, because, how we think about things changes based on experience, etc. And it's just interesting, I guess, the more that I read Martin Luther himself and theology and how he reads scripture, it is like Lutheran teaching to say that God does specifically will everything, because God is sovereign, like complete power over everything. And so I guess Martin Luther is so like, he refuses to give up that claim or that stake that God is completely sovereign. Now, one theological way to, I guess, work around that or to understand it differently is like, yes, God is sovereign, and God chooses to limit God's own power to keep his promises. For example, God is sovereign, and yet he has promised he won't flood the whole earth again to deal with sin. So though he has the power to do so, he refuses to do so because he has promised not to do so. So God limits the way he will deal with sin. Like God chooses to limit his own power. So that's one thing. And yet, I guess the flip side of it, I'm realizing though, is God has to have sovereign power for us to pray for him to make a difference, like in suffering. Because if it's like, if God can't make a difference when people are experiencing genocide, or for my mom who has cancer, my mom doesn't have cancer. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of examples, but like if God doesn't have the power over those things, then there is no point of praying. So that's like why it's so tricky. So I feel like Bible study is the place to puzzle over this, and instead of like when you're actually in a crisis, I won't do this to you, but I'm just, you can see all the different facets of it. It's like, and this will be my last thing that I say about it. I think I became like, oh my goodness, in like for Holy Week this year, because I guess just after reading a bunch of Martin Luther stuff, realizing, oh my goodness, like the reason that the cross is necessary is, this is now a combination of Martin Luther and myself, is not because like God demands a blood sacrifice to make, like, because God is somehow offended by our sin, but it's not like that God needs some like equation or formula to make it right or equal, but like that this, like the crucifixion is necessary so that like all opposition is heaped up against Jesus. Like there's, and that God does specifically will Judas Iscariot to do what he does, because like Jesus needs to be betrayed and arrested, and all the chief priests and the scribes need to be against him, and the Roman government needs to be against him, and he needs to die so that like when all opposition is heaped against Jesus and God raises him from the dead, it shows like that God's will be done, for no matter what the opposition is.
Because humans needed a grand metaphor.
Sure. And so did I, to explain it. Yeah.
He could have just said, oh yeah, I have the power to do this, I'm just gonna do it, and we wouldn't have believed him.
Yeah. Oh. I get it.
I'm sorry, but then are we saying that God wills specific people to get sick and die? Because that, to me, to tell me that God made my mom die is like the worst thing you could say ever.
Right.
For anyone. And I cannot reconcile the God that I know with someone who would purposefully put anybody through that.
Exactly. Which is why I name it to wrestle with it, because I'm not proclaiming it. Like we're discussing it in Bible study, because I'm not prepared to make that claim for exactly that reason that you just said.
I was gonna have words.
Yeah.
The way I conceptualize it, I don't know if I see it this way, but I kind of say that God is like he's playing a massive game of The Sims, which is one of those like you can build a city and you can build a house. Okay. You looked at me with a blank face. I'm sorry.
No.
And so like you don't control everything in those games. You pick and choose what you control when you want, and things just, you build the system and then the system does its thing.
Right.
And that's the only comforting way that I can think of.
That is where I am. But when I'm hearing that, God is all sovereign and wills everything to happen, that's very different.
Yeah.
Allowing something to happen is very different than causing it to happen.
Or maybe not even allowing, but like letting creation be what it was designed to be. Because I mean, what you're just describing connects with like the creation story, that God creates the land and then invites the land to participate in creating animals and plants. God creates the ocean and then invites the ocean to participate in creating the sea creatures. Thank you. So I guess this creation story aligns with what you're saying, that like God creates the system, as you said, or God creates the structure and the world, and then shares the power for creation to do what it will do. Sorry, Mark. Yes, Kim pointed out that you had been raising your hand. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's with all the good there is in creation, there also has to be some negatives.
Because God shares power, and creatures, human beings, will use that power, and that brings evil.
He wants to see how everything evolves. So we must have some negatives too, to see how things are. I can't explain diseases other than it's just a natural way of a negative that we have to cope with.
So then let's take the story and we'll let us set aside why things happen, and instead, so what does Jesus do in response to them? I guess So here, like, what is the good news of Jesus calming the storm? Like, what difference does it make for us that Jesus has power over the storm?
It's to reaffirm them, the others in the boat or boats, that, he can help calm things. So they must listen to him, and other, so that he shows them that he can help calm things down,
Mm-hmm.
and that they need to just be able to continue to listen to him, because he ain't going to be here forever. So I shouldn't say.
Do you ever feel like when you read this story, like as you read it, like the same thing that Jesus does in this, like in the story, then like happens in your heart? Like in the same moment that he's calming the storm, like then like that the power is over us too.
Yeah, it makes us
For sure.
read on more and to learn, to listen, to understand, I guess. I don't know how to put this more. Just like, to be a follower too, sort of disciple-like, and, just listen, and not to panic, but just to trust that you'll get through it.
Right. Not to panic, not to blame God, but just to be ready, to expect him to
Be calm and deal with it.
What were you going to say, Linda?
I don't
Were you
think I was
gonna
going
say
to say anything, but I was thinking it. I was thinking he'll be there for you. It's the same kind of what we were talking before, that don't worry, I'll be here. I'm here for you. Not to worry.
Good. Let's do the last couple of verses. And again, like what we did at the beginning, what sticks out to you? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. The word rebuked is an interesting choice. Does your Bible have that translation? Does it have that word?
Mine does, but mine said peace. Did yours say quiet, be still, or did it say peace, be still?
Be still.
Peace, be still. Okay.
The NIV, the New International Version, says quiet.
Oh,
Yeah, it does.
that's kind of an interesting.
I got both.
It's kind of an interesting, like what word? Because peace and, well, they can be the same thing.
I like that it says rebuke. I find this very helpful, and it actually connects with what we were just wrestling with, because he rebukes the storm, and that's the same word that appears when there are demons in the gospel stories. So he rebukes the demon, like, and so he makes them quiet, and so it's like he's responding to the wind and the waves as if they are demons, as if which would be like opposed to God's will, or they are opposite. They're opposite God's power. So like what we were wrestling with, Sarah, I'll just say, like, when we were like, okay, what do we do with that? That then to say, like, okay, because of that one word, can we say, actually, the conclusion is not that God specifically wills this storm to happen, if he's rebuking it because it's like a demon, so it's opposed to God's will, but instead that the answer to our problem of suffering, according to this story, could we say, is that, like, sometimes the natural world, whether that be storms or diseases or illness, creates chaos. And it is a distortion, or it is opposed to God. And so then, but God rebukes it and quiets it and restores it to what God intended it to be. I guess that's a very different answer than saying that God specifically wills the storm, or that Jesus willed it to happen, but instead like that it's opposed to how God would have it be, and then Jesus restores it.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know if the microphone, Sarah likes that. Do you like that?
Mhm.
Good. He said to the disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Back to your point, Kim, they've seen things happen and yet still they don't have faith.
I think between the last verse and this one, it's kind of like Jesus gives up on his planned teaching. Why, I'm not sure, but then turns it around on them as far as saying, kind of forcing them to question their faith at this point. So he's like, okay, I have this one lesson I'm going to teach them. They're not ready for it yet. Is that because they have no faith? So then he's turning it around on them for them to second guess themselves.
Like
It's like giving them the secondary lesson.
a teacher is taking the teachable moment. Yeah. To show them what they need to know at this time. Would you say it's accurate? Like, why are they afraid? It's because they're failing to remember all the stuff that Jesus has done before, like you were pointing out, because they're focusing more on the storm than on who Jesus is or who they know him to be.
Maybe it's a more here and now thing.
You
Here
think-
and now is what I know or what I see,
Right?
what I can understand, what is tangible to me. That's what I'm going to focus on. And he's trying to teach them, look at the whole picture. Look at
Yeah.
everything I have done.
Don't we all do that?
Yes.
You know, we talk a big talk about how powerful God is, but how many times in our lives are we confronted with something bad happening and we do everything in our power to stop it from happening without trusting that God's going to take care of us? All the time.
I think there's also to an extent, I don't know exactly all of the chronologicalness of the Gospels and how they fit together, but specifically in what's happened in Mark, the rest of his miracles have been human-centered, either healing a human or casting a demon away. And so those are like easier to grasp, and like we were talking about earlier with Linda's point of like, this is the biggest miracle that they have seen so far. So I think I think they didn't even know that he was this powerful, which is, disappointing because they probably should have, but it's a nice wake-up call for them.
Well, yeah, and for us, because do we limit God's power in our life because we only limit God's domain or realm to some things? Like if they're only expecting him, I mean, how do we limit ourselves from seeing what God can do, or from trusting God because we limit our expectations? Like they don't know yet, or they're not expecting him to have power over the natural world, just over human beings and demons. Like, are there realms of our life that we don't expect God to have power? You don't have to share that out loud. It's just a reflective question. I really like Henry's Children's Bible. One of the versions of this, Jesus is so less crabby than this translation. He's like, why are you afraid? You still have no faith. In the children's version, Jesus says, why were you afraid when I'm with you? As if to say, there is nothing to fear when Jesus is with you, which now is always and all the time. we have 7 minutes. I feel called to turn to Job for 7 minutes because that's the first reading. If you turn to Job chapter 38, because we have been dealing with the problem of evil and suffering in the world, and that is basically what Job is all about. Okay, Job 38, and I guess Nick, okay. Nick and Addie, it's on page 380. So Job 38, 1 through 11. Is that it? It's only 11 verses. Okay. So a little, just a very small introduction. So the book of Job is, it is a book about suffering and where God is in the midst of suffering. Job has, in the ancient world, like according to the Hebrew tradition, he has everything. He has a bunch of children. He has a bunch of livestock. He's really wealthy. He's really honored in the community. His kids all love him, and he loves his kids and his grandkids, and they have like a great relationship. And then all of his children die, and all of his livestock are wiped out, and he loses all of his property, and he gets terrible body sores, and his wife is more of a voice of criticism than support. And then his friends come, and at first they sit with him and just like are present with him, but then after that they have a lot of chapters, a lot of talking about how it's all his fault and that he's being punished for his sin. But Job maintains his innocence when he responds to his friends, the whole book of Job, and says, like, no, I have not sinned. I have not done anything to deserve this. And now, after 37 chapters, God is finally going to answer him. So we shall see what God says, because the rest of the book, whenever Job speaks, he prays, he asks God to respond. Where were you? Why is this happening? Where have you been? So do any of you feel like reading it? 1 through 11?
I'll read it. I'll give it a shot.
Thanks, Linda.
Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? How far do I go? Sorry.
11.
Okay. When the morning stars sang together and all heavenly beings shouted for joy. Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the room? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, and prescribed bounds for it, and set bars and doors, and said, thus far shall you come, and no farther, and here shall your proud waves be stopped. Shall be stopped? Who? Wow, that's a lot of questions there.
Yep. It is. Okay. I guess I will offer an interpretation to you, and you can tell me if you think it sits well or not, rather than just like open it up. A satisfying explanation I have for this, because at first when you read it, it seems like God is really irritated with Job, and why would you even bother to speak when you know nothing about nothing about me? Like, you can't possibly fathom who I am or what I have done, and you weren't there at the beginning of any of this. And so it when you first read it, it's like, oh, he makes Job seem so very small, and the point is to shame him. However, if you'll turn to chapter 42, look at 42 verse 7. So he questions Job for 2 more chapters. And And then he says, and then God says in verse 7 of chapter 42, after the Lord had said these things to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you and your two friends because you have not spoken to me what is right, as my servant Job has. So, and then he tells them how to make a sacrifice. And so just because of that verse, like when you read it in context with how God responds, the fact that he elevates Job and says that Job has spoken rightly about God, and the friends have not. The friends blame Job and say it's all his fault, and that he's sinned, and that's why he's suffering. So God says that's not right. He says that what Job has spoken is right. So when you read it in that context, I tend to read it not that God is irritated with him, because he just then at the end he praises Job for what he said, but instead. That invitation in verse 3, brace yourself or gird yourself like a man, and I will question you and you shall answer me. I think the Hebrew is like gird up your loins. It's like pick up your loincloth and get ready to wrestle. I see it more as like, it's not that God is angry with Job, but it's an invitation to honestly struggle through it, like to honestly question, to honestly wonder, and like he's inviting Job to be honest with him and to really consider this. So it's like he's taking Job's questions and struggle seriously, and yet at the same time the questions do tend to say like God wants an honest relationship with Job, and yet Job is not on the same level as God. They are different. So,
And Job is kind of, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, he's the epitome of forgiveness, because doesn't at the end, like his family come and feast with him, and just like, basically, I feel like Job's won the lottery, and it's like all his family are now coming back because he's got all this money and this wealth and this livestock and everything like that. I mean, like I said, it's kind of like somebody winning the lottery and all your family and friends coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, guess what? We love you.
It is like winning the lottery. And yes, you're right. That is how the book of Job ends. You got it. But it's all like new children that he gets. So the ones who died are still dead. But new ones are born. Right. I always thought that was weird until somebody in the congregation who had a child die say that the end of that makes sense to her, because it meant that Job had healed enough to risk having children again after having lost all of them, that he has had enough healing that he's ready to take that risk again, like the risk of losing those he loves most of all.
I'm sorry, I thought it was his brothers and sisters and like
no
and cousins that came.
No need to
Okay.
apologize. You are right in the sense that he does win the lottery at the end, and like everything is great again. I just wanted to make that point, because otherwise like if he just has all new kids, it's like, what? But I just wanted to offer that interpretation, like the risk of, because the idea in these chapters, God says that he creates like wild animals just for the fun of it. Even though they're wild, even though they're scary and dangerous to human beings, God makes them, and it causes God joy. And so it's like God takes a lot of risks in creation, and part of that with wild animals is the risk that it will cause death to human beings. And yet the creativity, the wildness is part of what brings God joy. And so it's like Job at the end of the book learns to be like God, in the sense that he takes as risks too. He will risk loving his children even though they could die just like the ones before. It's like, I guess he's this extravagant and take risks just like God.
I kind of feel that there's a point being made too, that God wants people to take risks. He wants people to question him. He doesn't want people to sit back and say, well, God's going to make everything okay. I don't need to worry about anything. I'm just going to sit here. Because in a way, it's essentially not going to teach anybody a lesson, but it's going to strengthen them to be better people.
That's lovely. Like the invitation is that God, you don't have to hold back your questions or feel that they're insignificant or they're stupid or God will be angry at you for asking them, but that God actually invites you to do it. God delights in you taking the risk to ask those questions. And like you were saying, to make your faith your own. And Mark added, God wishes us to evolve and prosper. Yeah, that I guess that God enjoys watching us grow and change and strengthen. And you're right, there are no stupid questions if they're asked genuinely. Okay, I noticed it's 7:34. So we shall close. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Almighty God, though not all of our questions are answered, and there is much that we have yet to learn and much that we're uncertain about, we thank you for this invitation you give us in Job to ask those questions honestly and that you take seriously what we have to say and what we struggle with. And we thank you for what you have made known to us, your love for us in Jesus Christ. This week, whatever storms we find ourselves, whatever questions we find ourselves wrestling with, we ask that you would open our eyes to see you at work and help us to trust in your power in all circumstances, that we may not limit you by our own expectations, but that we may trust in your power in our lives and in the world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Go in peace. Serve the Lord.